but certainly there is a consistent style that may be reminiscent of what you'd see as tattoo art or envelope art or handkerchief art. And it's something that's specifically created with the very few materials that they have. And art making in prison, there's already a hierarchical structure in which the artist who has a marketable commodity is at a higher level. And so everyone wants to do art and everyone loves the art therapist. And who am I to say, that that's not what this is about? And so they come into session. And so early on, their work may be masked by that type of prison work. But as they're given permission, so to speak, or as they give themselves permission to slowly express themselves in a manner that is much more releasing, much more authentic, much more genuine, then they start to recognize the escape that they're feeling, the sense of contentment or control when everything else is being taken away. That's not to say that there aren't people who don't come right into the session immediately launched into that. Certainly they do, especially if they've never done art before. They've never done art. They don't know what to expect. Immediately, they may start experimenting with the materials, and this may start emerging right away. And then, of course, there's the odd few that maintain that defensiveness throughout the entire time that they're with us. And you know what? That's okay too. If this does nothing else but gives them that 1 or 2 hours of peace of mind away from an environment that's unhealthy or anti-therapeutic, then so be it.
Well, one last question about
Yeah.
about your book, and that is this type of book's written with a hypothesis in the beginning, and then there's a lot of research and analysis. In the course of challenging your hypothesis, was there something that surprised you? Was there something that was unexpected that you weren't anticipating when you started the book?
Oh, absolutely. Everything. I mean, especially the work of the serial killers, it really, I began this with this notion of it being two sides, right? And yet the serial killer work and these extremely violent offenders, there's an interlock in the middle that really takes apart this notion of sociopathy and psychopathy. And while I had done so much work with people of that ilk, I didn't realize that once I brought them into the conversation, that it threw everything up in the air and it didn't work anymore. And so I had to be open from the very beginning that I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's a lot easier than you think.
Right.
And so I had to let it unfold and really allow the conversations and allow the art and allow the literature that's oftentimes wrong as well, to kind of help play out what may be the end result. So the final section, the epilogue, which I think sums everything up, brings up two very salient points for me, and things that ended up being antithetical to the very notion of the work that I do. And that is there. I'm trying to. I think I actually have written it out. Yeah, that one point is that aggressive and violent impulses are not always bad. And I think we as a culture like to think that such acts are unhealthy, when in reality, many things that we have or many accomplishments that we incur wouldn't have happened without such aggressive and even violent drives. And the other part of that is art making is not always good. And, that cuts to the core, because my entire career is built on this notion that art making is healthy and good. And make no mistake, art is not innocuous. Art is not safe, which means it can be dangerous as much as it can be beneficial. And that really kind of made me rethink a lot of the work that I was doing, and making me realize how careful we have to be as an art therapist, as a culture, when we view and relate to the work that we see.
That's a really interesting point, which is, did you consider art that inspires violence, which I guess would be along the lines of propaganda and hate art, right?
Yeah, that's when I say that again. I take that apart in the Holocaust chapter, where I look at how Hitler used art as a weapon and as a tool for propaganda, because let's face it, while we may use words that not everyone's going to understand, you're going to see an image and immediately recognize it. It's going to become a universal means of communication, and if you are the first person to communicate that and make that part of your, if you, that becomes a visual vocabulary that is shared, that becomes what the new norm is. I mean, look at what occurred in Germany in the 1930s with the poisonous mushroom book, of all this work that connoted the dangers of Zionism and the Jewish people, and all of the works that exaggerates racial stereotypes and hierarchical value. And so, yeah, art can very well be dangerous and be used as a tool. Look what happens on television, movies, and Facebook, social media. We're bombarded by images. There's a reason the meme is so much more powerful than 2 or 3 written paragraphs.
It's still very powerful in our world today, living in very interesting times. And, I think some people are kind of facing, some ebbs and flows of fascism. And a lot of times that has very strong imagery that goes with it. But, I promise you I wouldn't, end this on a down note, but but doggone it.
No, but I don't think that's a down note. I think if we recognize that value and we recognize the potency of the visual expression, then maybe it behooves us to learn how to use that visual means of communication, or learn to unpack the imagery from others, to learn to communicate and connect and reconnect and accept.
Yeah, and you know what? That just hearing you say that makes me think of artist Shepard Fairey, who basically he's repurposed propaganda, putting a more peaceful agenda, through that same propaganda imagery. So there's a hopeful way to end, right?
Absolutely. And the book is full of hope, I think.
Well, Dave, I really appreciate your time. The book is The Frenzied Dance of Art and Violence. When will it be available for purchase?
It will be available through Oxford University Press on, I believe, March 11th. I think pre-release might be March 2nd. So yeah, so it's within a few weeks.
Great. Well, I wish you the best, and I really appreciate your time today, sir.
Thank you so very much. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I do enjoy your show. Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week. You've been listening to Art Sense. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. If you've enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe, and while you're there, please rate the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback is the key to other folks finding us. If you'd like to see images related to the conversation, read a transcript, and find other bonus features, you can go to canvia.art and click on the podcast tab. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can email me at craig@canvia.art. Thanks for listening.